want to get to breaking news. Officials in Riverside County are giving us an update on the man arrested yesterday near a Trump rally in Coachella. Let's go ahead and listen in.
There has been a lot of media stir beginning last night with social media and further on today about the arrest. And so I am here to give you as much information as I can. I will answer all of the questions that you have. Keep in mind that the information that I'm going to give you may not be all of the information that I have, but because of what we're doing and because of the investigation that will obviously continue concerning this, there are some things that I cannot give you or that I will not give you, but I will do everything I can to answer your questions. So to begin with, yesterday afternoon, before former President Trump arrived to the rally, we made contact with an individual on the inner perimeter of our operation at the rally. As you can imagine, this was a very large event. In regard to previous attempts on the former president's life, this was not something that we were taking lightly. We had a very detailed plan in place on how we were going to keep not only the former president safe, but all of the participants or the attendees of the rally safe.
All right, let's break this down because this is seriously crazy. We're talking about a massive security threat at the Trump Coachella Rally. This guy, Vem Miller, rolls up claiming to have VIP access with fake press credentials. And what does he have in the car? A loaded shotgun, a handgun, and multiple fake ID. It's like something out of a bad spy movie. So the big question is, how does something like this happen? How does a guy with fake credentials and weapons get that close to the Trump Coachella rally in the first place? And the bigger question, why is someone like Vem Miller targeting this event? We're going to dig deep into that. I mean, this wasn't just a random stop. The guy had multiple passports, fake driver's licenses, and an unregistered vehicle. It screams premeditated. But what we really need to talk about is why and how far this could have gone if deputies hadn't caught him. This video is going to cover a lot of ground because this isn't just about some guy getting caught with weapons at a rally. We're going to answer some big questions. Who is Vem Miller and what was he really doing at the Trump Coachella rally? How did security measures catch him? And what does that mean for future security threats at political events? Why was Vem Miller released on just $5,000 bail? And what legal consequences could he face? And most importantly, is this part of a larger pattern of threats against Trump and other political figures? As we dig into this, we'll talk about how security threats like this could force major changes to the way future rallies are handled. This wasn't a minor issue. This was a serious breach at the Trump Coachella rally that could have ended very differently.
So in general terms, I will tell you that we had a larger outside perimeter and then an inside perimeter that was completely controlled by us, by Riverside County Sheriff's deputies, and both of them served different purposes. We did not keep residents from their homes. We did not keep people that were traveling through the area from going through if they had a legitimate reason to go through. So the outside perimeter was basically to allow people in that we thought belonged there. The inside perimeter was to make sure people were proceeding in the right direction. The way it worked yesterday is only people that were allowed inside the perimeter, the outside perimeter in a vehicle, was if you lived there or if you had documentation that said you were going to this rally in the form of an email with VIP credentials or press credentials. Those vehicles were allowed in. There were no other vehicles allowed. So that outside perimeter I will give you his name. The name that we have, and I'm going to put an asterisk by it as I explain this later, but we have his name as Vem, V-E-M, Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R, and his birth date is 10/26 of 1974. And the reason why I gave it to you like that is I will explain later. He approached the outside perimeter, gave all indications that he belonged there, that he was a participant that was allowed to get into VIP and to and a press corps, and so he was allowed through that outer perimeter. As he got to the inside perimeter, where deputies were conducting obviously a more thorough evaluation of the vehicles that were coming in, there were many irregularities that popped up. The deputy noticed that the interior of the vehicle was in quite disarray. The vehicle had an obviously fake license plate, and that prompted further investigation from our deputy into why the person was there and what he was doing. During that investigation, the deputy eventually found multiple passports with multiple names, multiple driver's license with different names.
Let's talk about Vem Miller for a second, because this guy is not your run-of-the-mill troublemaker. We've already heard from Sheriff Bianco that Miller rolled up to the Trump Coachella Rally with fake press credentials and a car full of weapons. Who is this guy, and why would he target a rally like this? First off, Miller's a 49-year-old man from Las Vegas. But here's where it gets interesting. He's tied to a group known as Sovereign Citizens. Now, if you haven't heard of these guys, they're a fringe anti-government movement. They basically believe that they're not bound by United States laws unless they specifically agree to them. That's why when Sheriff Bianco mentioned the fake license plate and multiple IDs, it clicked. Miller's operating with that same sovereign citizen playbook. Fake documents, refusal to follow government rules, it's what they do. Sovereign citizens, like Vem Miller, reject the authority of the government. They don't recognize licenses, passports, or even the legitimacy of the United States government itself. That's why he had those multiple fake passports and driver's licenses. It's all part of this ideology where they believe they can opt out of the legal system. And make no mistake, these guys aren't just about paperwork. They can get dangerous, especially when they're armed like Miller was. So now we have to ask the question, was Miller targeting Trump specifically? Or was this just another anti-government statement from a sovereign citizen? We don't have all the answers yet, but what we do know is this. Getting caught with weapons, fake credentials, and multiple IDs just half a mile from the Trump Coachella Rally isn't some random coincidence. And here's where I want to hear from you guys. Do you think this was a targeted attack on Trump, or was Miller just there to stir up trouble? What's your take on these sovereign citizens and their tactics? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading all of them.
The vehicle was unregistered, and the license plate was what we in law enforcement would recognize as one that is homemade and indicative of a group of individuals that claim to be sovereign citizens, and assuming the deputy assumes that he was part of that identifying group. So during the investigation, obviously those identification documents were found, in addition to a loaded handgun and a shotgun. Obviously, this was before the former president arrived. The person was taken into custody. He was eventually booked into jail on those charges, and eventually he was released. He will have to further his court case in the future.
Okay, so here's where things start to get even more unbelievable. Vem Miller gets caught with multiple weapons, fake IDs, and passports near the Trump Coachella Rally, and yet he's out on $5,000 bail. Seriously? $5,000 for a guy with a shotgun and a fake identity? Now, I know what you're thinking. How does someone involved in a situation this serious get such a low bail? Well, this probably has to do with the local bail guidelines in Riverside County, which may not account for the bigger context, like the fact that he was right near a rally for one of the most heavily protected political figures in the world. Typically, the bail amount reflects the initial charges, which here were firearms related. But it doesn't seem like the full picture was considered. Federal charges are still possible. And trust me, those would be a lot more serious, especially if it's proven that Miller was targeting the event or Trump himself. And those fake documents, that's impersonation. Potentially even more severe when paired with the weapons. We also know that Sheriff Bianco is working closely with the FBI and Secret Service, which means we're probably going to see more charges added as this investigation develops. But here's the bigger issue. This incident highlights a huge gap in how security threats at political rallies are handled. It's one thing to catch someone with a gun, but what happens when the system lets them walk away with barely a slap on the wrist. And this isn't just about Vem Miller. We've seen a series of security threats against Trump this year, whether it's people getting close to him at rallies or incidents like this. So the real question becomes, how are we supposed to keep high-profile political figures safe if the legal system doesn't take these threats seriously?
Right now, we are actively engaged in working with Secret Service and the FBI to ensure that this person is followed up on and all of the information that they can gather. I can tell you that from my perspective, from a state law enforcement agency's perspective, the firearms charges is what we arrested him for and booked him on. Anything further will come from the federal government, and quite frankly, I don't know if we will be a part of that. We will certainly be a part of that investigation and cooperating with them, but those charges, if any, will come from them. They will not come from us. With that being said, is there any questions? Yes, sir. I will not comment on what he said or specifics that we learned or gained from our contact with him. Quite frankly, I'm not really concerned with the statement that he gave the media after he was released from custody. I can tell, because it's irrelevant to me. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there were a minimum of 25,000 people that entered past those deputies into that location that had legitimate identification and weren't carrying guns. So I will just go from there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you're listening to the Riverside County Sheriff there, Chad Bianco. He's giving us the very latest on a man that was arrested right near the Trump rally in Coachella yesterday. What he told us just moments ago is that before the former president arrived to the rally site, that Riverside County sheriffs did make contact with a man in their inner perimeter of that rally. He went on to say that deputies noticed a lot of irregularities when it came to the suspect's credentials. Once they searched the suspect's vehicle, the sheriff said they found several illegal guns, including a handgun, shotgun, high-capacity magazine. He went on to say they also found multiple passports in the vehicle, and they don't believe that vehicle was registered. They also believe the vehicle had a fake license plate, calling it possibly a homemade license plate.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Sheriff Bianco did a solid job laying out the details, but the bigger question remains, what's next? Because this incident at the Trump Coachella Rally wasn't just a fluke. We're seeing a pattern of threats against Trump at these public events, and it's not slowing down. Here's what this means for future rallies. Security is going to have to change. We're talking about more intense screening processes, maybe even expanding the perimeter even further. We've already seen VIP and press credentials being faked. That alone is a huge red flag. Miller was caught because the inner perimeter security caught on. But what if someone slips through next time? Not to mention, this isn't just a Trump problem. All high-profile political figures are at risk. The stakes are too high, and incidents like this show the need for enhanced security measures across the board. I wouldn't be surprised if federal agencies like the Secret Service and FBI start pushing for tighter protocols at all political events. And let's talk about the public reaction here. You've got Trump's supporters who are probably more fired up than ever. They see this as just another example of the intense hostility aimed at Trump, and it's likely to fuel even more engagement at future rallies. But on the flip side, the political landscape is becoming more dangerous. The 2024 campaign trail is heating up, and if we're already seeing threats like this, things could get worse. So where does that leave us? Well, we've got a guy with weapons, fake credentials, and multiple IDs arrested right near the Trump Coachella rally. And what happens? He's out on bail. The system's still piecing this together, but one thing's for sure. This isn't going to be the last security threat we see this election season. If anything, it's a wake-up call. So what do you think? Should security at these rallies be ramped up even more? Is the legal system failing to take these security threats seriously? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned because this is just the beginning. We've got a wild road ahead.